Hey friends, so as you can tell, I'm sick. And I really don't have the energy to really do much, but I did finish reading Station 11 last night, and so I decided that since I can't really do much anyway, I might as well go ahead and watch the HBO adaptation. I believe it is a mini-series. So this is going to be similar to my book and movie review of No Exit, which if you have not seen, I'll have that linked in the cards and in the description. And in Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, it's about a global pandemic. So if the actual pandemic that we are still dealing with is a little too close to home for you, I don't recommend this one. But in this book, we're following a variety of characters who are all interconnected in one way or another as they experience what is known as the collapse, which is essentially the collapse of civilization. So there's this thing going around called the Georgia flu. This book takes place in Canada. It reaches Canada and everything goes downhill. There is no more Wi-Fi, no TV, no technology. There's no way to get in contact with people. There are no cars and most roads are blocked because people were trying to escape and either died on their way or they got stuck in traffic and abandoned their cars. And we're just following all of these characters as they are trying to move forward from this monumental event. So that's really all you need to know about the book, I would say. I did listen to the audiobook of it and I don't know if that had an impact, but I personally felt like the book was a little boring. It just didn't hold my attention the way that I would have hoped because I do think that the premise is very interesting. And even then though, there was at least one plot twist that I thought was really good that I didn't see coming, although in retrospect there's definitely some foreshadowing. But I'm interested to see how the adaptation goes and what changes, if any, they make. I rated the book 2.75 stars, so a low 3. It wasn't bad, but like I said, I did find it a little boring and it just didn't hold my attention. So I'm gonna start watching the adaptation. This is probably what I'm gonna do all day because I can't do shit else, so why not? Alright, so I've just finished episode 1 and there are already so many changes. It'll be interesting to see what else they change. There is a new, I guess it's a character, they changed a character and it added to a particular family dynamic and that was interesting. So I wonder if this character will make it further in the story than the actual character that they're based on. It'll be interesting to see. It's a very interesting change, so I wonder how it's all gonna work out. Hello, it's the next day, and I did finish watching Station 11 last night. It is 10 episodes. I don't remember what time I started, but I ended up finishing around 8:30, so not too bad, I guess. Although, if I were going to rate this, I'd give it about a 3. I only liked it slightly more than I actually liked the book, and there were a lot of changes. Some of them were good, some of them didn't make any sense. So the only thing that I really like more about the adaptation than I did about the book was the structure. So each episode kind of focuses on one character, one location, which I liked because it felt a little less all over the place. And even with some of the changes though, I did overall still find it kind of boring. Like I will never reread it or rewatch it. So before I jump into my spoilery thoughts for both the book and the movie, I just want to give a quick little rundown of content warnings. For the book, there is murder and kidnapping, sort of the same for the adaptation. There's also mention of sexual assault. And then in the adaptation, but not in the book, there is child death and a mother dying during childbirth. So if those are things that you are sensitive to, please be mindful of that. So that's really all that I can say without spoilers. Again, would I really recommend either one of these? Not really, although I would recommend the adaptation if you are a fan of Shakespeare. And I guess the book too, but it's added more into the plot in the adaptation. So maybe if you're a fan of that, you would enjoy it. Otherwise, if you have not yet read or watched Station 11 but would like to, this is your official spoiler warning. Okay, so starting off with my thoughts for the book, like I said, I did find it kind of boring, but it was interesting to see how all of these characters are sort of interconnected. Mostly all of these characters are connected to the character of Arthur Leander, who is an actor. So we have Kirsten, who is a little girl that was in a play with Arthur, Jeevan, who is the paramedic who recognized that Arthur was having a heart attack on stage, Miranda, his first wife, Elizabeth, his second wife, Lydia, his third wife. Tyler is the only child that he has with his second wife, Elizabeth. And so all of these people end up crossing paths one way or another, and it all has to do essentially with Arthur, but also with the comic that his first wife Miranda wrote, which is called Station 11. Now, the big plot twist in this story is that after the collapse, Tyler, his son, becomes known as the Prophet, and it's weird. It's really weird because he has this idea that he survived the collapse for a reason, so the people that didn't, it's because they were bad and they weren't worthy and all this other shit. So he and his mother end up joining basically a religious cult when he's very young. That's how he ends up becoming the Prophet. And so you hear stories about the Prophet, and about how he like collects young wives. Like there's this little girl who tries to run away from him, and she's like 12, and she's like, I ran away because I was promised to be his fourth wife or some shit. It's really fucking weird. And so in the book, he essentially gets killed by one of his own followers because he meets someone else, and you know, he's a kid. He's like, I know that what we're doing isn't necessarily right, but you know, he says it's for a reason, da da da. And so he's having a conversation with someone, and he starts to realize that this is not the life that he wants to live. So he ends up killing the Prophet and then kills himself. So yeah, it's weird. Those are really all of my feelings about the book. Like I said, it was kind of like random characters that are all slightly interconnected one way or another. Now in the movie, they do change a few things and they make it more interconnected. So Jeevan, the paramedic that we meet, who is there the night that Arthur dies, he ends up having to take care of Kirsten, the little girl in the play. That made the connection between the two of them much stronger. It made more sense for the story. I think I did like that change a whole bunch. However, in the adaptation, they make Jeevan not a paramedic, which doesn't make any sense. It would have made more sense if he actually had been a paramedic, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Some small changes include that Jeevan's sister, who didn't exist in the book, is the doctor who calls him and says, hey, this thing is gonna get really big. Like, you gotta figure out what to do. She tells him, go to Frank, who is their brother, go to him and y'all need to stick together. In the book, Frank is in a wheelchair, which is part of the reason that Jeevan wanted to make sure that they were together, was so that if anything happened, his brother would have someone to depend on. In the book, Frank realizes that Jeevan needs to leave the apartment after their food and everything is starting to run out, and so he takes a bottle of sleeping pills so that Jeevan doesn't feel obligated to stick around for him, or he doesn't slow him down. In the adaptation instead, it's Frank, Jeevan, and Kirsten together, and someone breaks in and Frank ends up being killed. Okay, so for the Prophet in this one, in the adaptation, it got weird. Tyler ends up faking his death. So there's a plane that had landed at the airport where they're stuck at, but everyone on the plane was already infected. So none of them got off the plane and they just stayed and all of them died. Tyler, in the adaptation, makes people believe that he is on the plane and sets it on fire. So he fakes his death. And so his mother, of course, is fucking grief-stricken because she thinks that her son lit himself on fire. He actually lit the plane on fire and then left. And so instead of like going around and collecting wives, which I guess this is slightly better, he's like running around in the woods like Peter Pan and the fucking Lost Boys with a bunch of little kids. It's weird. And so I don't know, it seemed like at the end they wanted him to be redeemable. However, there's literally a scene where he kidnaps two children from their grandmother, brainwashes them, and then sends them back with bombs and blows up their house. And sure, you're not collecting little girls to be your wives, but you are literally sending children around with fucking bombs. And I don't there's no coming back from that. I don't understand how he somehow has this fucking redemption arc in the adaptation. It doesn't make any sense to me. Also in the movie, Kirsten tries to kill him at some point, but his children save him, and they get him to safety, and then they end up crossing paths later on because Kirsten's a dumbass and separates from the group that she's with. And he's like, oh, I can get you back to your troop if you just help me get to this place. And so they end up teaming up, and then she helps him reconcile with his mother. That didn't make any sense to me. There's also this weird scene where Kirsten is poisoned, and so she's having a conversation with her younger self, which I don't really think it was necessary because essentially they used it as a way to flashback to when Frank was killed and why she and Jeevan ended up leaving the apartment. But I feel like they could have just done that in an episode since it was already jumping back and forth in time anyway. Like, I don't really feel like that was necessary. And then lastly, there's the part where Jeevan and Kirsten eventually get separated. So they're like holed up in this cabin that they found. There's no one there. It's pretty nice. For some reason, Kirsten can hunt. She's like 8. She can hunt and set traps, which is weird because we don't really know how she got those skills, especially because like her parents are kind of negligent towards her, it seems. So I don't know how that happened. But one night Jeevan gets mauled by a wolf. I don't know why that was the route they took it, but he survives, and then he's trying to make his way back to the cabin and he gets taken. So he gets kidnapped by this woman who takes him to this place. So he wakes up and it's like a fucking Bed Bath & Beyond or some shit, and there's a bunch of pregnant women. All of them are supposed to give birth on the winter solstice. There's like 14 of them. Why? I don't know. I mean, it talks about like, you know, repopulating and everything, but like how all these women got impregnated and why they're all supposed, like why the solstice is important is never explained. So in the book, Jeevan is supposed to marry this woman named Daria and have 2 kids, and so he goes with one of the pregnant women, I don't remember her name, and they end up having children. But also like he essentially becomes a doctor, which is like, okay, well, if he was already a paramedic in the book, then why wouldn't you actually make him a paramedic so that he actually has some sort of medical expertise, and so that it would make sense for the scene where he actually has to become a doctor and he's like delivering babies and shit. Also, that's how he and Kirsten get reunited, is because they're like, oh, we have to call the doctor because so-and-so is sick. So he travels to them at the airport, and that's like, it would have, like, why not just actually make the man a doctor? Okay. I don't know. It was weird. Like I said, there were a lot of weird changes, and a lot of them, frankly, did not make sense to me. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I would recommend either the book or the movie, but that is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and the adaptation that is available on HBO Max. The next book to adaptation review that I will do will likely be The One by John Mars. I got the book from Dasha a little while ago, and I believe that adaptation is on Netflix, and it's a mini-series. But let me know if you have read Station 11 or watched it, if you're planning to, and if you did, if you agree with me or if you have different feelings. And feel free to let me know if there are things that I missed. Like I said, I thought both of them were pretty boring, so did I space out a couple times? It's absolutely possible. Otherwise, that is all I have for you today, and I'll see you in the next video.